So, it's time to fix Modern Warfare 2. All things considered, I think the game is actually in a pretty good state. I've been playing it literally all weekend, and this is the most I've played a Call of Duty beta since Black Ops 3. So, needless to say, I've been really enjoying the game, and in my last video, I gave my take on what kinds of gamers might enjoy this experience, you know, who I'm recommending this Call of Duty game to, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you should definitely play it yourself to get the most accurate representation of that. But in this video, this is going to be more of a message to Infinity Ward, with a lot of community feedback. This is going to be comprised of both my own personal opinions and just what I've seen from the general COD community. This video is meant to be kind of a discussion board for Infinity Ward to look at and you guys to leave your feedback as well. But we're going to be talking about a lot of things that the game needs to improve on before its full release, or just things that would make the experience a lot better. First thing on the agenda is map design. Now, throughout the course of the beta, there was 4 maps. We had the museum, we had Mercado, Farm 18, and then the hotel. And I think pretty much everybody's in agreement that the hotel is the worst map in the game. Now, unfortunately, not everybody got to play the museum because for some reason, I'm not really exactly sure why, they removed the museum from the rotation, but I'll get to that map in a second. Farm 18 and Mercado are by far the best maps in the game. They are 3-lane in a sense, but they're open-ended enough with enough of those like Infinity Ward classic power points that it plays extraordinarily well in whatever game mode you're playing, either in team deathmatch or domination, what have you. Also, there's very little, if at all, wasted space in both Mercado and Farm 18. There's like, you know, there's not large swaths of the map that are completely useless. Nobody spawns there. They don't serve any flank routes. These maps are clean and to the point, and I just want to say for Infinity Ward, you guys really got these maps right. Now, however, I cannot say the same for Hotel, and I do want to level my actual complaints at this map. The main problems with Hotel, as far as the way I see it, is it's so unnecessarily corridored off. So the map is kind of big, but it's so divided by a bunch of 90-degree angle rooms. And what that means is you walk into a room, for example, your back is covering at least one of the corners. However, you have to walk into a very large room with angles that are, you know, all across your field of vision, but you can only cover one at a time. So effectively, you walk into a room, you have a 1 in 3 chance of guessing right where an enemy's going to be. And if you guess wrong, you will die because you simply don't have enough time to check every corner before you expose your own self for too long. This map basically requires people just to hold one angle and camp. That on top of the middle portion of the map being so insanely open that you will die if you're there for any period of time, there is no reason to move around in the hotel map. Like this map needs to be either reworked or almost just scrapped entirely. Like it's pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, and not to mention, because it's a hotel and it has a roof over virtually the whole map, kill streaks are useless. Chopper gunners will not get any kills. Stealth bombers can't really do much work, and you know, SAE strikes, nothing can get in from over top. So the score streaks or kill streaks you're forced to run are pretty much things like Juggernaut or anything ground based. It doesn't flow well with the systems of Modern Warfare 2 as is. So I would strongly reconsider either opening up the map a little bit, removing some of the corridors, or something along those lines. Now, as far as museum goes, I don't have as much of an analysis on that map because again, it did get removed pretty quickly, but I noticed again there were like it almost seemed like there was 2 maps in museum. There was the playable space, which you would play in the actual interior of the museum, roughly speaking, and then you had like this outer section, like in the yard, there was these like pillars and structures. Nobody ever spawned there or even engaged in gunfights there at all. Like it was a separate map, really. And while to some extent maybe a little bit of that is okay, it seems like this map was not even completed yet. So all in all, as far as map design goes, focus more on what makes Mercado and Farm 18 work really well and double down on that and get rid of things like Hotel. Moving on, let's discuss the minimap. This has been very contentious for people, and I'm quite torn on this one because I do want to explain the theory behind the minimap change, obviously, as it is not a traditional minimap function, and I really like the idea and the theory behind it, but the execution is definitely up for debate. So a lot of people want the traditional minimap to return where, like, basically all unsuppressed fire appears on radar, that sort of thing, like UAVs. You know, you can pretty much have a good understanding of of how your enemies are flowing throughout the map. Now, the theory behind the minimap change where red dots don't appear by default is because they don't want people being hunted. That is literally a quote from IW, and I understand that sounds kind of stupid, so I don't want to make a straw man out of Infinity Ward's argument. I want to steel man their argument. So the theory behind this minimap change is so that you don't spend the majority of the game staring at your minimap. The thing is, I've been playing older Call of Duty multiplayers for reviews I've been doing, so in particular, things like original Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 1, and MW3, it is true, with the general like pace of the gameplay and how like UAVs work and, you know, unsuppressed fire, the traditional minimap, let's say, you do spend like 60 to 70% of the game just staring at your minimap and not the actual gameplay. So the idea behind this is not only do players feel less hunted, maybe UAVs are more rewarding, but most importantly, the fact that you're more engaged in the actual gameplay. You're using context clues for like, you know, what flags are captured to maybe predict where they're spawning, or context clues of where your teammates are so you can kind of think about where the enemies might be, that kind of thing. I really understand and I like the idea behind it. However, I find it equally as valid where people think, hey, maybe this new minimap change doesn't play that well in practicality. Perhaps this old minimap system may work better with the pace and flow of this year's Modern Warfare 2. I think that is a totally valid reason to at least try it out. I would like to see how the traditional minimap would play in this game. I think that the theory is solid from Infinity Ward and, you know, the idea is there, but I would like to compare both and see which, you know, people generally prefer. Next, I want to discuss movement. Now, personally, I think movement in Modern Warfare 2 is in an excellent spot. I think it's, for the most part, almost perfect. There has been some debate, you know, across the table about whether slide canceling should be in the game or the bunny hop, stuff like that, but I'll leave that up for the internet comment section to debate. Personally, I'm a fan of it. I wouldn't touch any of that there, but I will say the one thing that nearly everyone has been in concordance with is the fact that something about the speed at which your gun is ready from sprint or even just like, you know, like jumping, that kind of thing needs to be increased, because you seem to always lose gunfights if you're just like not ADS'd first, just by default. And I know it sounds obvious, like the player who ADS first should win, but what it means is like you can't even like push somebody and then come into ADS. Even if you make a smart play, you will always lose to that person who was literally just sat there aimed first. It's essentially just making sprint out time faster, I guess. It's kind of a hard idea to put into words, but I just think the gun readiness needs to be up faster, and I do agree with that. It would encourage people to move around a little bit more. All right, next up is another controversial thing, the perk system, and I think my personal feelings aside for a moment, the community at large does not seem to, they're not in love with the system, and it definitely is different. It's kind of jarring. Like, it's certainly strange for Call of Duty, but just like the minimap change, I want to steel man IW's argument for just a second, just as a thought experiment and something to consider. Now, the perk system, in my opinion, works really well. I think the details could be rearranged, but the theory behind it is very solid, and like I said, addresses one of the weakest points in the core gameplay of Call of Duty. Essentially, Call of Duty's core gameplay is boiled down to getting kills and kill streaks effectively, and if you're not earning kill streaks, there's really nothing else to earn, or kills don't really work towards anything. However, perks in this game are earned via playing the objective and getting kills. So effectively, it's something to reward you with in-game progression and still do well besides kill streaks. It's by no means a total solution, and the perk system is really just a band-aid fix to Call of Duty's like biggest core weakness, but it's at least something, and it's like an attempt at that. And for what it's worth, I think it works moderately well. Again, when it comes to the details, like effectively what perks are placed where in their categories, I think that's up for debate. Like maybe Ghosts should be reworked a little bit. There are some in the middle category that I think could be put in the ultimate category and vice versa, but that's up for the internet chat room to debate and IW to ultimately decide. But the theory behind it is interesting. I guess we'll see what they decide to go with the full game going forward. But I did want to mention that because I know a lot of people don't love the perk system, and I would love to know why you don't love the perk system if that is the case. Is it the details that bother you, or is it the theory behind it? Now, something very interesting I brought up in my last video that I thought was genuinely a nitpick, and, I thought people were going to get annoyed at me for bringing it up because it's such a minor, small thing, but the kill pop-ups and animation text and color really need to be changed, and I didn't understand how much that actually resonated with people until I read the comments of that video. It seems almost everybody does not like how the animations look. They're a bit too subtle, too clean. They don't really, fit well with the style of this game. I have a few suggestions of maybe what this could look like if you literally took the MW 2019 kill pop-up animation and changed the color and maybe the texture to be like a digital or like neon green in a way, just like as some rough suggestions. I'll put them up on screen. I think that could look really well with the overall art style of this game. There's two main problems with the pop-up animations as they appear in MW2. Number one, they're not really that satisfying, just like they're not big or bombastic, and they're really low-key. Like, it just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't hit the same like it does in older Call of Duty games. But also, on a more practical reason, sometimes it is really hard to see those pop-ups, whether you got the kill, if there's like a lot of visual recoil and smoke, or if you're looking into a lot of light. Sometimes it can just be genuinely hard to make out if you got the kill or not. And to put it into perspective for a moment, thankfully this is something we are giving feedback about and not like core issues of the game like connection and stuff. Connection was always really good, so we have the privilege to complain about stuff like, kill pop-up animations, and thankfully that's probably quite simple to adjust, and not only would it help just from a practical standpoint, but it would also help the game look better just aesthetically, in my opinion. Another thing as it relates to visuals, I really started to notice this the later days in the beta, but I gave this game a lot of credit for having not much visual noise within the maps. Like, there's not as much clutter or just like unnecessary textures on your screen, and that's true for the map design. However, the guns, I assure you, do need maybe a little bit of tweaking when it comes to like the smoke coming out of it, visual recoil, how much your weapon bounces. Again, I understand it's realistic or whatever, but let me give you a news flash. Nobody cares how realistic something looks if they can't see what they're fundamentally shooting at in the game. It comes down to balancing a game to, again, look realistic, that's fine, but at the end of the day, it's a video game, so allow video game mechanics to still take precedent. Like, we need to be able to see what we're shooting at. It's not terrible, like, I've seen worse instances, but there's some moments in the game where visual recoil is just simply too much, it's unnecessary, and it's very gun and attachment dependent. Like, some weapons, some attachments completely kill visual recoil and smoke, that kind of thing, and others seem to amplify it. So, on the weapons that it's the most, effective on, I would say consider tweaking that down, maybe just lowering the effects of that thing a little bit. Next up, real quick, I want to talk about Killstreak balancing. To be fair, I don't have that much to complain about with streaks, other than a couple of gripes. Number one, there is absolutely no way something like the Stealth Bomber should be the same kill requirement as a Chopper Gunner. At best, the Stealth Bomber makes one pass and will kill, maximum every player on the enemy team once. However, the Chopper Gunner will stay around and you could potentially kill the enemy team multiple times over. There is no way those two things should be the same kill or score requirement whatsoever. Also, speaking of the Chopper Gunner, I don't know if it was a thing purely for the beta, but the fact that the Chopper Gunner is stationary, does not move around at all, is absolutely criminal. I'm really not sure if that was a thing, if they're working it, how it's gonna, traverse through maps. I'm not sure, but this needs to be able to move around. Not only is it just way more boring while it's stationary, it's really easy to take down too. And not only that, the enemy pop-ups while you're in the Chopper Gunner are gray instead of red, and because of the game's color palette, you might miss them. Like, it's kind of hard to see enemies in that, so I don't know why. I mean, some of them are red. I'm not really sure why they go from red to gray so often, but I just think they should make them standard red as they've always been, and it makes it that much more straightforward. Don't overthink that. But again, the Chopper Gunner needs to be able to move. That is first and foremost. Now, another thing I have some feedback on is the attachment system, but it's probably not like what you're expecting. I just think that, and this is something that I guess can't even really be addressed to any real degree, but the attachment system with how complex it is and the sheer number of things like grips and muzzles and all the stuff that make, really minuscule minor changes to your actual weapon are so unnecessary for something as simple as like COD Arena multiplayer. Again, these mechanics belong in something like PUBG or or Arma or Tarkov, whatever. Like those are the kinds of games that it belongs in, and perhaps this system was made with like DMZ and Warzone 2 in mind, which is fair enough, but the complexity of attachments is so unnecessary for something as simple as COD Arena multiplayer, so it just kind of feels like out of left field in some way, but it is what it is. I understand that's a new COD style. Again, can't really be addressed, but I did want to at least point that out. Now, other minor changes I want to mention really quick, things like the reload cancel animation, a lot of people seem to be like confused or annoyed about. I just think that the new reload animation should be a toggleable setting where you can make it the traditional YY reload cancel just by default, or you can have the new system on. I just think making that a player choice is just easily the best thing you could do. People who don't like it can just take it off, and people who like it can keep it on by default. Also, map voting is a feature that the players have been very adamant about, and a lot of people want to see it. Obviously, we don't have it in a beta because it's a beta and there's like 3 or 4 maps, so it's not really how that works. But when the full game comes out, I think people generally want to see a map selection or at least a vote. And then with lobbies disbanding after every game, this has been a big complaint. And now the fact that I've played the beta quite a lot, and I've been playing other COD MPs for reviews and stuff, like older ones, disbanding lobbies completely kills the potential for social interaction, which is such a net negative for the game. I really do think that's something that needs to be looked at. And also, deaths need to appear on the scoreboard during the game. I genuinely don't get it. This drives me absolutely insane why it doesn't. And a lot of people claim that it's to protect like Timmies from seeing how many deaths they have, or getting roasted about it in game, and potentially having a worse experience. But there's ways to mitigate that. Like, you can mute people, you can leave the game if you really want to. I don't know. It's just, not only is it kind of just like a weird idea in my opinion, it's just impractical as well. I need to be able to see like how many deaths I have. I want to know how much I'm feeding the enemy team, like kills potentially. It's just a practical thing at the end of the day. I've got some other minor complaints as it relates to like perk balancing or just like UI things, but a lot of those are really minor, and I will leave those up for you guys to discuss as well. I want to know your opinions on all this stuff, or anything you feel like I left out that you want Infinity Ward to see. Definitely leave it in the comment section. But anyways, that's pretty much it for the video. Drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See you soon.